Welcome to another episode of Jim's Stream of Thought, where I share with you my ruminations on series available on streaming. In today's episode, I'll be reviewing Sweet Tooth, the adaptation of the DC Vertigo comic book by Jeff Lemire, developed for the small screen by Jim Mickle and executive produced by Susan and Robert Downey Jr. Yes, that Robert Downey Jr. And in a nutshell, Sweet Tooth is the story of Gus, a half human, half deer hybrid child who was born into an apocalypse. This is a different kind of apocalypse. There's not a single zombie in sight, but it was, as are so many other apocalypses, brought about by a global pandemic. Sound familiar? Although instead of a particularly creative name, the sickness in this film has basically just been dubbed the sick, though it does have an official virus name. Okay, so this particular apocalypse, rather than uh, give birth to a zombie pandemic or a zombie epidemic, has basically resulted or coincided more accurately with the birth to normal people of human animal hybrids. It's a phenomenon no one can explain, but what everyone has taken note of is that the human animal hybrids somehow have the key to understanding and possibly curing the sick. Okay, and so it's, I mean, as you can expect from any apocalyptic narrative, society has collapsed, and in its wake, a quasi militaristic government has arisen, led by the mysterious and sinister General Abbott, who commands the equally sinister last men, whose job it is to basically round up any human animal hybrids they can find and either kill them or bring them in for experimentation. One of the doctors, who happens to be experimenting on human animal hybrids in search of a cure, is Dr. Aditya Singh, played by Adil Akhtar, okay, whose interest in finding the cure is quite personal because his own wife, played by Eliza Villani, his wife's name is Rani, is also sick with the sick. Okay. And well, Gus, played by newcomer Christian Convery, isn't sick. Okay, none of the human animal hybrids are, but his life is in peril because, like I said, they're targeted, and it just so happens that in escaping one such threat to his life, he befriends a former last man, the hulking Tommy Jeopard, played by series co-lead Nonzi Anozi, who has, as all of them do, a mysterious past. Okay. So for 8 episodes, we see the story of Gus, running parallel to the story of Dr. Singh, and running parallel also to the story of former couples therapist Amy, played by Dania Ramirez, who is content to live out the apocalypse by herself until she finds a human hybrid baby on her doorstep. You have all of these narratives traveling parallel to one another and, of course, intersecting at the end of the season. Okay, so what are my thoughts on the series? Well, as someone who followed The Walking Dead right up until the time that Negan bashed in Glenn Ree's head, that was like 5 years ago now, and that was the point when I basically gave up on the entire series. But this should tell you why, because what really kept me glued to The Walking Dead wasn't the gore, it wasn't the zombies, it wasn't the horror, but it was the human element. It was seeing humans survive in these horrible conditions. And I have to say that even though Sweet Tooth is a decidedly different take on the apocalyptic narrative, the post-apocalyptic narrative, it has that human element that made the first few seasons of The Walking Dead, the first 6 seasons of The Walking Dead, so attractive. You had humanity surviving in spite of everything. And like The Walking Dead, it also has a juxtaposition where you have the sweet, innocent Gus juxtaposed against the evil General Abbott and the scientists who are willing to do all kinds of truly unethical and horrific things to human hybrids in their search for the cure. And it's also a really sad commentary on what humans will do to each other when they perceive a threat. Like in Dr. Singh's community, they live in what looks like a happy suburb. But when someone is found to have the sick, oh boy, it's really disturbing to see what they do to that neighbor. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone interested in watching this. Okay. So, in short, it's an enjoyable narrative. I quite liked it, and I will stand by the numerical score I give this series. But I will say this: it's got, shall we say, viability problems in the long term. Now, okay, I don't want to preempt Netflix here, and I know they're infamous for giving shows the axe before they even make it to a third season. But right here, right now, with this specific narrative choice, I see a problem with Sweet Tooth because part of the, how shall we say, part of the selling point in the narrative is the fact that this story is viewed through the lens of a young boy. Christian Convery is a very effective actor. He's cute, he's charming, but he's young. I mean, that youth is not going to last more than 2-3 seasons max before his voice starts to crack and he starts making the journey from boy to adolescent to man. And I can guarantee you that a young kid is way more charming than a hulking, surly teenager. Okay. Now, if the series is gonna transition from Sweet Tooth's childhood to his adulthood, okay, I suppose that's one way to do it. But then and to my mind at least, it lose its uniqueness. Because precisely the charm of this series, is that it's from the point of view of a child. So, in my humble opinion, I don't think that this series would be served well by running on and on the way The Walking Dead did. I mean, Chandler Rigg, aka Carl Grimes, grew up, but that wasn't a problem because he wasn't the lead character. It was a problem for the producers of The Walking Dead, as I understand it, because when he came of age, there were disputes about his salary, and instead of resolving them, they basically killed him off. I mean, if the reports are to be believed. But here you have a series revolving around a kid. So I don't really know how they're gonna address that when the kid hits puberty. So my take on that, my hot take is that this series should probably wrap up while he's still young. Maybe, I don't know, go into a TV movie or whatever. Okay, that notwithstanding, that concern notwithstanding, just appreciating the 8 episodes for what they are, I give this series a very good score because I quite like the narrative. You can tell that money was spent on this, even though they cheaped out a bit on some of the CGI. But that's understandable. We can't all be Marvel after all. Okay, and well, I really appreciated it. I thought the narrative was good. I thought the actors were convincing, and I think this deserves another couple of seasons. Okay, so I give this an 8.5. It's like I said, it can be a little bit rough around the edges, but it's genuinely enjoyable, and I would recommend it to fans of post-apocalyptic fiction. Okay, and that's all for now. Remember, if you like what you see, give us a like and a subscribe.